Okay. So we'll just move into some basics about mold suppression. So generally speaking, mold is something that I think we're all kind of naturally concerned about. However, I think it's important to not cause too much panic after disaster and make sure that everyone understands what is mold and what is mildew. So that way you're not going through this whole process of mold suppression, if it isn't mold, but also so you're not like underrating it and it really is a problem that could be affecting your health. So unlike mildew, mold grows on and below the surface of materials. So like drywall or wood, you might be able to like get it off the surface level, but you won't know, but it could potentially be behind that object or that surface. And so unlike mildew, which, really just grows on the surface level, it can be treated fairly easily and it typically won't grow back. Mold cannot be treated with bleach. I think that's like our number one thing that we want to get across in this section is that mold cannot be treated with bleach. It will maybe take it off the surface level, but it will not kill it and it will come back and it most likely will not get below the surface. So in order to make sure you're killing off the mold, to make sure you're like permeating the entire surface of the area that's impacted by mold, you want to use a fungicide. Two brands that we use in our operating sites and that we recommend are Shockwave or Concrobium. And these are available on, you can order them on Amazon, have them delivered. You can also go pick them up at Home Depot or Lowe's, and they're fairly accessible. If you're looking to take on the mold suppression work by yourself, we believe that homeowners can handle this project, or renters, or any disaster survivor can handle this project on their own fairly easily. It's also possible, like if there's like a neighborhood, like a whole street, needs to work on this project, you can also like get neighbors together. And a lot of times voluntary organizations can also help with this particular process. It takes between 2 to 5 days. It really depends on the amount of area that's impacted by the mold, the size of the home, and really the extent of the issue. And of course, the amount of people you have working on the project. It should cost between $500 to $700. However, some of these materials that we have priced into this estimate, you might already have. So, some of the hand tools that you might need to get nails out and different things that we'll get into in a moment, you might already have some of that stuff laying around. You might already have some of the cleaning supplies and maybe you already have gloves and goggles at home. So that $500 to $700 is aiming, I think, high, and that's assuming that you don't have anything that you need to get started. One thing that we do want to highlight is that we suggest that the area should be less than 20% wet via a moisture meter. We don't expect everyone to go out and buy a moisture meter. And one of the things that we do suggest is maybe, again, like if it's a street, if it's a neighborhood, or if it's a community organization helping a specific neighborhood, then maybe you buy like 1 or 2 and you share it throughout the group, because really you're only going to need it at the beginning and at the end of this process. So it really doesn't make sense to have everybody go out and buy one of these. So that's just like something to keep in mind. One other thing to highlight on here is that if the insulation did get wet, you want to make sure that you remove it to at least a foot above the water line, because insulation kind of has water travel through it like paper. So if it starts at the bottom, it'll work its way up. And so it's important that you cut that off a foot above the water line to ensure that where you stop is completely dry. These are just some quick mold suppression steps. The first 4 are really just like preparation activities. So you want to identify and address the water source. So if it's the roof is leaking or there's a window that was broken that's allowing water to end up inside the house, you want to find a way to address that. And it doesn't have to be a long-term repair. It really just needs to be something that'll stop the water from coming in. So it could be as simple as tarping the roof, boarding up the window, because we know that not everyone's going to have the ability to quickly redo their entire roof or replace the window. But this will allow you to get into the house, start the mold suppression, and limit the spread of the mold. So it's not a much larger project later on. Number 2, isolating the work area. Really, we only recommend that if there's only one area of your house that's been impacted by mold. So if it's just one room because the window's broken and mold's only in there, then we recommend that you isolate that area with plastic sheeting, cover the vents, and then get to work. But if your whole house flooded and there's been water damage throughout, likely there's mold throughout, isolating the work area is a little bit less necessary, because the main reason we do this is just to stop the spread of the mold spores throughout the house. If they're already there, I wouldn't recommend taking the time and the materials to isolate the different work areas. We recommend that you wear respirators consistently throughout the project and for 24 hours after applying the fungicide to the impacted areas. And we also recommend that you clear the nails and the staples. Of course, not any vital nails and staples that are like holding the house together, but any nails or staples that might be in the different beams that are kind of just like sticking out because water could get into those areas. So if you pull them out, you'll be able to get the fungicide in all the little like curves and ensure that there's no mold hiding behind there. Once all of that's done, you can begin treating the framing of the home. So you're going to do that with 3 steps. You're going to scrub it with a metal wire brush, like side to side, up and down in circular motions to really make sure that you like disturb any of like the mold and that's growing there and like really like start to like break it down. And then you're going to spray it with the fungicide. Once you spray it, you're according to the bottle, the product you end up using, it'll tell you like how long to leave it on there. Once you're done with that, you're going to want to wipe it down. We recommend marking different things, like marking these based off of like what you've done. So once you spray it, typically we recommend that you mark that area with an X. And then once it's been wiped down, you mark it with like a circle around the X or different things like that. So that way you don't like waste material, do things in 2 different, like do anything twice. And that way, if you're working with multiple people, they know like, okay, well, I'm supposed to be wiping and this area is ready to be wiped. And it's just very clear. And that way you don't miss anywhere either, which is the most important part. Once everything's been wiped down, you can go ahead and vacuum everything. We recommend that you vacuum everything 3 times. And this is just to like pick up any debris that might be left on the framing, as well as get any like residual mold spores. If you don't have power, it's okay to like not be able to do this part because the most important part is that fungicide should be killing all of the mold spores. However, we do recommend this step, but understand it's not always possible, not always practical in that post-disaster phase. Next, disposing of any mold contaminated items. We recommend putting them in black contractor bags and like taping them shut. Again, do what you can with the means and like materials that you have in that post-disaster phase. Most important part is getting that fungicide on the impacted area. And then drying out completely. You can turn on fans, you can turn on your heat, you can open windows, whatever it is that you have available. However, if you don't have electricity at the moment, or you can't turn it on safely, leaving your windows open and just paying attention to the weather, making sure it's not raining, closing the windows when it is raining, is one way to be able to dry this area out without electricity available in your home. Any questions there? Okay. We also have a guide online that goes into more detail about our mold suppression process and gives you like a whole materials list and everything like that. And you can find that on sppprotects.org, or we have a Start Here page. Either way, you'll be able to find it on our website.